figured it out, so we can talk about it tomorrow for
Yeah,
the rest.
we don't have time for that now. It's 4 o'clock. Okay. All right. We're up on YouTube, so let people in. Hello, greetings, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Our Ancestors' Voices, a weekly program sponsored by the All African People's Revolutionary Party. We apologize for a little late. We are disciplined about being on time, but the Restream program we use completely changed their format without forward notice. So we were sitting here trying to figure out how to log on, and we still didn't figure out everything. So we're just really broadcasting on YouTube today because we didn't figure out how to restream on every other place, but we'll have that problem corrected next week. But we are glad you're joining us for this week's episode. Every year on November 11th, in this very strange and cesspool country that I live in, the United Snakes of America, they celebrate this odd holiday called Veterans Day. And on this day, we are supposed to give honor and respect to everyone who has served or whatever you want to call it. I don't know. It's not serving, but people who participated in the U.S. military in some capacity, whether it was the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, National Guard, whatever the hell it is, give them some kind of respect for what they've done. And from our standpoint, there's no respect that's involved in that. The U.S. military, every branch of it, is involved in executing imperialism all over the world, subjugating the masses of people on the planet Earth so that U.S. capitalist corporations can exploit the resources of all of these people, human and material. And nobody can deny that. Nobody can refute that. But they have to promote this concept because that's the only way they can justify what they do. If they convince people here that they're doing something honorable by participating in the US military, then that's the only way they can justify what they have these people do all over the world. But the fact that 25 US veterans kill themselves, combat veterans kill themselves every day, is proof that that propaganda really doesn't work. The only people it works on is the people who don't really care what those people go through when they send them overseas, just as long as the people here are comfortable in their lifestyle. That's all they really care about. When they say support my troops, that's really what they're saying is I don't give a damn what you do or whether your legs get blown off. I just want my comfortable lifestyle. So the program today is designed to expose all of that, those contradictions and that nonsense, and to talk about true organizations and individuals who have made legitimate contributions to forward human progress. So we're glad you're here to join us for this. And we also want to give honor and thanks to the indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere. I had a chance to participate in supporting Indigenous Day here in the city I live in yesterday, and was able to provide some security and some support and was glad to do it. And they were very thankful and had great conversations about the unities of our struggle, really positive things that, those of you that sitting behind keyboards and don't get out and participate in anything and end up saying a bunch of things that just aren't true anywhere else besides between your ears. That's why it's important to be involved in organizations so you can have actual experience and not just be victimized by the confusing brainwaves going around and whatever's supposed to function as brains in people's heads. So glad to do that and honor and respect for them. And then, of course, our African ancestors, who are the reason that we're here. They are the reason why we're here. I have as much allegiance to the US as it has towards me, which is zero, absolutely zero, no allegiance towards the US. I don't give a damn what happens here. I'm not concerned about their elections. I'm not concerned about any whatever they do. I'm gonna continue to struggle for the liberation of my people and all peace and justice loving people. I don't care anything about, I didn't wake up upset this week. I don't understand what the hell's wrong with you if you're just now upset. After 530 years of subjugation, you're just now upset and have anxiety. You need to go see a psychiatrist. This is an empire. It's an unjust society. It always has been, and it always will be. End of discussion. And so your choices are to either line up on the side of justice and fight against that subjugates us, or to do what a lot of these coons and clowns are doing, is side with the oppressor, because you might have a potential payday if you do that. And those are your choices. That's it. There's no middle ground. There's no gray area. That's it. So I've always been on the side of the masses of humanity. So nothing changes. I just continue to do the work that I do. I don't know why that's so difficult for people. How are you doing this week? I'm doing the same as I was when I woke up in this goddamn empire, and will be the same, continuing to have energy and commitment to struggling for a better world. What the hell is wrong with you? So we thank our ancestors for that, because they are the ones who positioned us so that we could be prepared for what was coming at us. We're prepared. We're not caught off guard by anything these barbarians do. So get yourself together so you can join us in this fight. So we're glad that we can talk about this subject, because it's right on course with what I just got through saying. And Our Ancestors' Voices is sponsored by the All African People's Revolutionary Party, AAPRP. And the AAPRP is a revolutionary, independent, mass Pan-African political party that is based in Africa. We're not the Democratic Party. We're not the Republican Party. We're not the Likud Party or the Labor Party or the Conservative Party or any of these bourgeoisie capitalist parties. We're a revolutionary Pan-Africanist political party that's not defined by colonial borders. We exist everywhere that African people exist on the planet Earth. And our objective is Pan-Africanism, which is one unified socialist Africa. And our work to achieve Pan-Africanism is to unite African organizations, not random individuals who don't know what the hell is happening in the world and just want to try to make some money, but revolutionary Pan-African organizations on the ground who understand the necessity for one unified socialist Africa. Kwame Nkrumah spelled this out in the Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare. And so if people don't know who Kwame Nkrumah is, they don't know what the Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare is, don't waste our time. Do your research and then come back and we can have a logical conversation about all of this, right? Because this is out here. This has happened. This is history. It's happening every day, right? And Our Ancestors' Voices is hosted each week by myself, Ajamu, and Shakura, my biological and ideological daughter, and we are active organizers within the All African People's Revolutionary Party, obviously. So to get us started on this topic today, True Veterans for Justice, I turn it over to Shakura.
Thank you. Appreciate you, sir. Greetings, everyone. So we have so much that we need to just reflect on when we even think about what the basis of Veterans Day is, when we think about what the intention is. We'll talk more about that throughout the seminar tonight, but it does always relate back to the intentions of this country being what the foundation of this country has always been. So we should know that anytime there is a holiday or institution that this country wants us to celebrate, we should associate that exploitation had something to do with this quote unquote celebration, theft of land, kidnapping people or taking people's lives, harming people without asking for sexual consent. We should just connect those two right away. Just like all the statues that exist in the US are celebrating harmful people who have done horrific things throughout time, but yet there are statues created to honor them. Harmful people are named after schools. Harmful people are named after parks where we go take our children to play. So we should just automatically assume that if it's a holiday that the US wants us to celebrate, it probably has something to do with advancing the struggles of oppressed peoples everywhere. And we should just automatically make that connection. We should also take it upon ourselves to do the research of the background of that holiday. But if we're not ready to take that approach, we should at least understand that by celebrating this so called holiday, we are endorsing harm and trauma to come to other people who might be some type of oppressed situation. So, whether they're queer, whether they're differently abled, the list can go on and on. And we should also assume that 9 times out of 10, because that's how America was established, was off of the backs of oppressed people, indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere, literally stealing their land, and African people literally stealing the people and the resources that descended from the continent, right? So, this is where we start to really kind of understand why it's important to be able to do research, why it's important to be able to identify credible sources, what all of that looks like. Because if you're not careful, you will buy into the rhetoric, you will buy into the propaganda where they will try to tell you that everything that America did was to make sure that you could be free, was to make sure that you lived in the best country in the world. And that this is why people are, struggling to get here, whether their water is breaking on the borders of Mexico and they're trying to cross the lines to get to the US, or they might have come here without papers, whatever rhetoric they are telling you, you must understand it's all based on supporting one notion, and that is so the US can continue to be an ally to Europe, so that Europe can continue to be an ally to the US, so that they can continue to harm Palestinian people by supporting the Israel intentions, so that they can continue to harm other people who are colonized, and most important, so that they can maintain imperialism by keeping in control of other military economic systems all around the world so that they can stay in control. The US's biggest fear is that all of us will rise up and take back our stuff, take back our humanity, take back our resources, and destroy them. That is their greatest and deepest fear. So they will stop at nothing to relinquish that power. And part of maintaining that power is encouraging us to celebrate bogus holidays that have nothing to do with advancing our own struggles, but instead maintaining them, instead manicuring them and protecting them to still have the ability to exploit us. That is what the purpose of celebrating these holidays means. You've heard us talk about how we always try to encourage the explanation of our own institutions within the All African People's Revolutionary Party. That's not by accident. That's because we understand that we have to live a life where we have no choice but to resist, to resist, to resist, to resist by any means necessary, because we can't trust anything that is communicated to us. We can't assume that our harm is not going to be the priority. We can't assume any of that. We have to understand that we've never been important, we've never been significant. The only thing that is significant from African soil is the resources, and at one point, the people who came from there. And now the people are not even significant because of industrialization, machines that can do jobs so much faster than enslaved Africans can. And so now we are completely irrelevant. And to a certain extent, that's why we're being eradicated. So there's a couple of points here that I want to highlight before I move to the next slide. We have to understand that the US has made it their lifeline. Like, this has always been the US's MO, to be on the wrong side, the side that endorses corruption, the side that endorses exploitation, theft, by any means. So theft of resources, theft of land, whatever, take your pick as you want to fill in the blank. We can also think about how, there's this piece about this concept of what it means to fight. Revolutions have the intention of helping to free people, helping to liberate them. Absolutely. But I wouldn't use the US as an example of revolution. I would definitely not connect those two. When I think of the word revolution, I think of humanity. I think of people who sacrifice because they want to help those who are in need of help. When I think of the US, I think of selfishness. I think of greed. I think of capitalism. As I said, I think of corruption. Those are the words that I think of when I think of the US, not actual revolutionaries who have contributed greatly to helping to make this world better. Without them, you and I may not be sitting here or standing or in this existent space together, right? So these are some different ways to kind of think about how it's quite an oxymoron if somebody were to say to you, revolutions have the intention of freeing people, but this is why we're fighting on this stolen land because we're trying to seek revolution. Well, that's an oxymoron. Because if you're trying to free the people, then one would argue that the land itself would also be free. It would not be stolen. So it doesn't make sense for you to want to free the people, but to want to maintain the conception and the containment of the land, if you will, when in actuality, really what you're saying is you're trying to keep the land so that you can benefit from it. And here we have greed coming in. So you don't really have good intentions for the people that descended from there or the fact that they deserve to determine how that land is used, not you, because it's not your property or your possession. But that's what imperialism is, right? That's what capitalism is, right? I shared an example with Comrade Ajamu earlier today or yesterday about how I purchased a bed frame and I made it very clear what size my mattress was, and they still sent me the wrong size. And it's very interesting to me how capitalism works. We can go to the next slide too, comrade. It's interesting to me how capitalism works because when we think more about it, really what we're saying is it's such a dehumanizing system. It will take every opportunity to question you, to question your morals, to question your values, to question your ethics, but yet none of that gets to be questioned on the opposite side. So I'm going through the process to return this bed frame, which was not sold by a company like Walmart or Target, but instead a seller who posted that they were selling it on the website, right? Being able to use the space, location. So I can't even take it back to the company itself because it wasn't purchased through the company. It was purchased through a seller on the company's website, right? And what's interesting to me is it takes them 48 hours to get back to my email. And then now that they've responded, they want me to send them a picture proving that the bed frame is in fact too small for the mattress. And I just laughed when I read the email because I thought to myself, only capitalism would have the nerve to question my integrity as much as I work very hard to be honest, to be integral, to be an ethical human being, all qualities that revolutionaries who truly care about changing conditions for the masses of people, by the way, those are qualities that revolutionaries carry. Absolutely. Revolutionaries don't carry dishonesty. They don't carry inhumanity. They don't carry the intention to harm people who don't deserve to be harmed. They don't carry those intentions. We try to live with an ethical principle because we're thinking about other people and how our choices will impact them. You have the nerve to send me the wrong size frame and then you want me to prove to you that it doesn't work so that I can get my money back that I spent on it? Wow. But that's capitalism. So now I'm thinking, how can I get back at the system and not spend too much time in the process? Because my time is valuable. And capitalism doesn't have to care about that. And so we can just continue on with thinking about what that means in terms of how this notion of justice versus greed, what does that really look like, right? So this thinking about what was the whole purpose of Veterans Day? What was the intention behind it? Well, the intention was to continue to push the US imperialist propaganda down our throat. The intention was to remind us that we should be practicing what it means to be good patrons of this country. We should be practicing patriotism, right? We should be practicing that. So if the US tells us we need to celebrate this holiday, then good citizens of this country will do exactly that. They won't push against the system. They won't resist. They won't question it. They won't be critical. They won't do all the things that a true revolutionary would do. Why? Because a true revolutionary knows, as I said previously, that nothing this country releases can be trusted. This also means that nothing that this country is asking of us should be acted on, because to do so would be to endorse the greed, to endorse the exploitation. And more importantly, what do we look like as African people celebrating a holiday that strongly encourages theft of resources coming from our land? That doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. So, no, I'm not going to turn a blind eye. I'm not going to look the other way. I'm going to understand why you want me to do what you're asking me to do, because that means you're trying to get me to endorse your plan. That means you're trying to get me to give you permission to continue to steal from my people and my land. That means you want me to give you permission to continue to steal from me, my ancestors. And you want me to ignore the fact that you have brought on harm for over 500 years. This means you want me to look the other way when I know you're pushing the imperialist agenda. This means you want me to not think about all the bodies that you have harmed and hurt and murdered in the process of you getting all the resources that you need. To this day, I continue to think about our seminar when we talked about how the whole reason that the Eiffel Tower is lit up is because of Niger's exploitation of energy and resources, and how those resources are stolen from Niger so that the Eiffel Tower can be lit. And it's such a beautiful thing to have that type of information, because then you can have a better understanding of just how corrupt these systems are. And these entities that have been stealing and being greedy for all this time. And you start to put all kind of pieces together because you're starting to draw a bigger map of what the bigger issue is. So the US has every intention of encouraging my behavior where we stay in line, where we fall in line, where we practice being good citizens, what all of that looks like. And part of being a good citizen is selling a lie and buying it and accepting it. That's what being a good citizen looks like. And so, we understand that this is backwards. We understand that this is not based on truth. I'm sure Comrade Ajama will speak to this in just a moment, but just to continue to highlight, he just mentioned that we have several dozens of veterans who have already serviced this country and are literally taking their lives. Suicide rates are one of the highest rates within that population. We also know that a lot of people who serve are not able to find livable wages because they have different issues, physical, mental, emotional, whatever, and they can't get the support that they need, so they can't keep a job. And so it's just interesting to me how, there's all these lies that are sold to them to get them to sign up and enlist. And then once they do your bidding for you, and you can use their body as collateral damage if they survive that. And if they come back, now they are no longer good to you. Does that sound familiar to anyone? To me, that's how African people are being treated right now. You no longer need us to pick your cotton, as I said, because you have the cotton gin now. So now what you're doing is you're killing us off because we now need to be eradicated. And it's the same thing with people who have given their lives to fight for this country, but yet they're treated like crap now because they're no longer valuable. These are the things that we have to think about, you all. This is the narrative that is backwards within itself. And because of that, it's kind of giving the reflective narrative, if you will, where the abuser is making the victim feel very guilty, when in actuality, the victim should be able to make the abuser feel guilty. But yet, this is what we're kind of looking at, where it looks like the abuser is really like the hero, the US, when we know that that's not the case. But how do we practice speaking out against that? How do we practice that? How do we monitor that? How do we communicate that? These are the things that we're going to continue to talk about. And as always, it helps not just to be in this seminar, but to join an organization that's working for justice. If you're not ready to do that in the last 2 months of the year, then maybe you can increase your political education by at least researching an organization that is working for justice and finding a way in the last 2 months of the year to support that organization that is working for justice. This work is not cheap, and there is a lot to be done, as you can see. And so the organization that's working for justice of your choice needs your support monetarily, economically, financially, computer, generative, whatever that may be. If you're good at speaking, whatever you can do, we need your help, you all, because it's only going to get worse.
Ashe, obrigado. Thank you very much. And we continue just to talk about the contradictions with this concept of Veterans Day. And we start by just saying there's no confusion when it comes to the question of justice. Like I said when we opened the program, you are either on the side of justice or you aren't. There's no gray area. There's no area where you could say, well, I'm trying to figure out if I'm going to be on the side of justice. If you say I'm trying to figure out whether I'm going to be on the side of justice, that automatically places you on the side of injustice. That's universally true, and there's really no argument that can intelligently disagree with that. And so the criteria for justice is always going to be fighting for what's right, regardless of the consequences. And by saying what's right, what we mean is you have to be fighting for values that value humanity, that value justice, that value the ability to advance the planet Earth, the planet itself, the people, the animals, the plant life that inhabit it. You have to be fighting for values that are designed to advance all of those entities, not to advance yourself over those entities, not to advance yourself in spite of those entities, but values that are designed to advance all of those entities. So justice can never be something based on our individual needs for income or by uniting with imperialism, despite whoever we do harm to in the process. So it really shouldn't be difficult. You know, it should be very clear when we say, what's that song that was popular during all of the Black Lives Matter protests a few short years ago? I can't even remember the song right now, but something about what side are you on? That's clear. Like you're either on the side of justice or you're not. If you see the police beating the hell out of somebody on the street and all you do is just take your phone out and film it so you can get likes on social media, then you may as well just go up to the police and say, hey, you got an extra uniform that I can put on because I'm with you. I mean, that's really what you're doing when you do that. If you're not engaged in some, and don't lie, don't leave your lie. I'm not saying if you're not prepared, then that's all you're gonna be able to do. But at the very least, you should be engaged in activity that's designed to get you prepared. So you're engaging in organizing work that's designed to put you in a position so you can do a whole hell of a lot more than just stand there and film somebody getting their ass kicked by Gestapo police. But if that's all you're doing, you have no other plan in your life, and all you're doing is you see that and you're just filming it. If you even do that, you probably just standing there watching it. Then yeah, you may as well just join the police and be their mascot, because that's what that means. You're on the side of injustice, and there's really no logical argument that can justify what the U.S. military does representing U.S. multinational capitalist interests all over the world. There's no justification whatsoever. You can go back as far as you want to go back. You can start with the so-called American Revolution. Like Shakur said, obviously that war was fought to colonize and steal these territories from the indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere. I mentioned I was at the indigenous event doing security work yesterday for them yesterday, and the indigenous sister who was leading up the group that I was working with, the local TV news station here, one of them came up to interview her, and the European who was the reporter, what happened with she told him she's a Homo Indian, as she describes it. And he said, well, what happened to your people? Did they just migrate
She's like, they didn't migrate anyway. Their lands were stolen. And he's like, well, I'm talking about now, today. What did they do? And she's like, today, their lands are stolen. And I clapped. She's looking at me on the side of him, and I clapped because that's an absolutely correct answer, right? And this is what the American Revolution, so-called American Revolution, was fought to do, was steal the lands of the indigenous people. And if you go to the Civil War, I mean, if you have to have an explanation for what that war meant, then you should go. I don't care if you're 99 years old, you should go back right now and start over and restart kindergarten and do the whole thing over again, because you just completely missed anything of any value whatsoever. I mean, clearly, there's no question the Civil War was fought to ensure that industrialization continued throughout the entire so-called United States of America. That was the reason why the Civil War was fought, because the Northern capitalists wanted to ensure that this industrialization continued, and the institution of slavery was creating an obstacle to that, because slavery did not permit for mechanization to pick the cotton gin, and all of these manufactured machines, which were higher levels of production. Slavery didn't allow that to happen. And these crackers in the South wanted to maintain their institution of slavery. That is the reason why the Civil War was fought. It had nothing to do with ending slavery. That was immaterial to these Europeans. So that war had nothing to do with justice. And if you go on down the line to all of them, World War I was fought to consolidate imperialism. World War, all of the wars about the colony, the wars of 1812, the Spanish-American Wars, all of these wars were fought to consolidate colonialism. World War II was not fought to eliminate fascism. How could a fascist country eliminate fascism in another country? How could that be the case? That's not the case. That's why the U.S. and the Third Reich and Nazi Germany was in power 8 full years before the U.S. even bothered to get involved with World War II on a military level. So clearly they were not that concerned about the fascist nature of the Third Reich and Nazi Germany. They weren't concerned about that. And no question, we know as African people, they were never concerned about justice and eliminating fascism, because all of the African troops that they duped to join the U.S. military and fight on behalf of the U.S. military in Europe, in the European theater, as they call it, were still forced to exist under segregation laws. Even in Europe, they were forced to do that. Africans who made the mistake of interacting with European women in France and all of these countries where European troops were U.S. troops were stationed, were subject to discipline. The captured Nazi troops would eat in the mess halls with the European troops from the U.S. military, whereas African troops from the U.S. who were fighting the Nazis were prohibited from doing that. So this war had nothing to do with justice, none whatsoever. The Vietnam War had nothing to do. I know they tell you, well, we fought against Vietnam to stop communism, and you don't even know how to spell communism. And that war had nothing to do with fighting against injustice. It had everything to do with defeating Vietnam's socialist revolution as a way of ensuring that capitalism could continue to be consolidated in Southeast Asia. That's what that war was all about. The Korean War before that was fought for the exact same reasons. And all of these wars recently, whether you talk about the invasion of Grenada in 1983, what they did in Panama around that period of time, the bombing of Libya in 1986, the invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan, all of these wars were fought for one simple reason: to consolidate and ensure the continued existence of imperialism. And what they're doing today against Iran and against Lebanon are fought for the exact same reasons: to preserve Zionism, because Zionism is another form of imperialism. That's all it is. That's it. So none of this is about justice and fighting for justice. None of these wars that they have these people fight. And that's the reason why we, as peace and justice loving people, have to be against anything the U.S. military does. And the last thing we'll say about that stupidity is that tomorrow in this country, you'll see all your people, and I say your people, I'm talking about people you know, your relatives, your friends. They'll be posting pictures of themselves in these U.S. military uniforms, and all these people will be commenting, "Oh, thank you for your service." I mean, what a bunch of absolute bullshit. I mean, absolute bullshit. The bottom line is that people do that, post those pictures because they have nothing. They made all those sacrifices for the U.S. military and have absolutely nothing to show for it. And the only way that they could justify wasting so much of their time and their life energies, and in many cases, even their physical capacities and certainly their psychological capacities, is to try to uh, accept this false narrative that they did something honorable by whatever the hell they did for U.S. imperialism. And so, we have to understand when this happens, that's what that is. It's nothing else other than that. This is a backward imperialist country. So nobody is going to come to revolutionaries who are trying to overthrow this backwardness and say, thank you for your service. That's not going to happen. If somebody said that to me, I would start wondering what the hell I was doing wrong. I'm glad to play the villain role in this society. Anybody that is trying to stand up for justice, you're supposed to be a villain in this backward ass society. You're not supposed to have people honoring your service. I would be on the verge of going into insanity if people started praising me for my work on a mass scale in this society. That would be insane right now, because there's no way that these people spoke. 81 million people voted for this fascist man, and 65 million voted for the fascist woman. And so what that tells me is that America wants fascism. It wants to exploit the people on the planet Earth. And that's why I didn't wake up upset, because I already knew that I was against all of those goddamn people before it even happened. So what the hell would I have to be upset about? But the only thing I'm upset about is I wish the Bastico would have come on TV and with a swastika on or a Ku Klux Klan robe in a hood. Please, God, ancestors, make his ass come out there and do that. He should come on TV and say, I'm the president, God damn it, and I'm reinstituting slavery, and we're moving all of these indigenous people into these prison camps. Hey, because the only thing that would do is finally wake people the hell up. And then we can really get moving in our work for justice. That's the problem now. Is so many people just want to be lulled to sleep. They just don't want to be uncomfortable. And so they accept all this nonsense because it's not disturbing their sleep. And so like people Wednesday morning, I didn't get any sleep last night. Did you? I'm like, I don't ever get any sleep because I'm constantly concerned about the state of affairs for the majority of people on earth, not just because of some one goddamn bourgeoisie election where no matter what the results are, multinational capitalism and imperialism wins and the masses of people on earth lose. I'm not that stupid. So that's what Veterans Day is in the US today. And so we want to talk about, if you got to celebrate something that means something, that's based on values of justice. So if we dig deeper for the truth, then you have to define the truth as people who are struggling to win justice for the majority of humanity, regardless of the consequences. And principles like that, struggling for justice, regardless of the consequences, these principles have always been the foundation of the revolutionary Pan-African work that we do. And some quick examples we have here are like the Democratic Party of Guinea. They are the party of the people of Guinea in West Africa, the party of Ahmed Sekou Touré, one of the revolutionary Pan-Africanist ideologues for the All-African People's Revolutionary Party, and one of the people who developed the Democratic Party of Guinea. And Sekou Touré was, of course, without him, we probably wouldn't even have an All-African People's Revolutionary Party today, because he was the one in the Democratic Party of Guinea who gave refuge to Kwame Nkrumah when imperialism illegally overthrew Nkrumah's government in Ghana in February of 1966. It was Sekou Touré who said, come to Guinea and be co-president of Guinea and co-president of the African Revolution. And that allowed Nkrumah to come to Guinea and to live in Niassili, in Conakry, and to write the Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare, which we use as the handbook that guides our revolutionary work today. So we are forever and eternally grateful to the Democratic Party of Guinea. And at that same time, the PDG, the Democratic Party of Guinea, gave foundation and staging area to the African Party for the Independence of Guinea-Bissau, the neighboring country to the south, the PAIGC, the party founded by Amilcar Cabral. And the PAIGC used Guinea as staging ground to wage its anti-colonial war against Portugal. And were this not to happen, it would be very difficult to imagine Guinea-Bissau being independent of Portugal today. And all of these things that the Democratic Party of Guinea did put it in the crosshairs of imperialism. We said the definition is struggling for justice despite the consequences. Guinea is a very poor country, even to this day. And they knew that by engaging in the revolutionary work that they did, they would do nothing to endear themselves to imperialism, which was hoarding all of the resources. So when Sekou Touré invited the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, Cleve Sellers, Ruby Doris Robinson Smith, or Smith Robinson, John Lewis, Miss Fannie Lou Hamer, all of the organizers from the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee went to Guinea as official guests of the Democratic Party of Guinea. Sekou Touré knew, and the Democratic Party knew they were doing nothing but putting themselves in the crosshairs of imperialism. When Sekou Touré invited, in the Democratic Party of Guinea, invited Malcolm X to come to Guinea, gave him a cook, gave him a driver on a car, and a diplomatic residence, and gave him free access to all of the people of Guinea, treated him like a diplomat when he was public enemy number one in this backward-ass country at that time. The Democratic Party of Guinea and Sekou Touré knew that they were putting themselves in the crosshairs of imperialism, and they paid the price for that. They paid the price in terms of continued sabotage against the Guinean Revolution and the invasion of Portugal into Guinea in 1970 for all the things they're doing, and the eventual overthrow of the Democratic Party of Guinea and Sekou Touré. These things happened because of the PDG's commitment to justice and forward human progress. And the PDG still exists today in 2024 and is still fighting for revolutionary Pan-Africanism in Guinea and all of Africa. We just had a program just a couple of weeks ago where we had an international webcast and the comrade from the PDG spoke to all the things I just mentioned. The PDG and the people of Guinea are proud of their contributions and will continue to make them. And we know that the PDG will come to power again in Guinea because their values and their work are based upon principle. And we mentioned the African Party for the Independence of Guinea-Bissau and the neighboring Guinea-Bissau, south of Guinea, is another organization. Just recently, in the last week or so, the police invaded the PAIGC headquarters, where I myself have been, and invaded and harassed our comrades on the ground who were members of the PAIGC, members of the PAIGC and the AAPRP. The reason for this is that imperialism is working to continue to undermine the PAIGC in Guinea-Bissau. And they've done that by invalidating a valid election a year ago in July of 2023, where the PDG won the majority of seats in the National Assembly in Guinea-Bissau in their national election, and where Comrade Brother Domingos Piera, the president of the PAIGC, won the presidency of Guinea-Bissau by almost 100,000 votes, and the neo-colonialists
And the agents for imperialism who run Guinea-Bissau today, Mbala, and all of these crooks and criminals that are there, they lied and said that the election was invalid when there were all these international observers who confirmed that the election was as valid as an election can get. And so Mbala refused to allow the new legislature to be seated, and Mbala refused to give up the presidency to Comrade Brother Pierre. And so today, these forces of reaction, understanding that the PAIGC is not going to go away, the African Revolution is not going to go away, are continuing their efforts at police terrorism, military terrorism against the militants of the PAIGC. And the militants of the PAIGC, they are the same as the APRP. We know them. I know them. And I can tell you they're not going to be deterred by the violence, by the threats, by anything that neocolonialism does towards them. These Africans are committed to justice. Again, that's the definition of veterans who should be honored. So these are the people that we honor when we talk about any kind of Veterans Day. These are the people that we look at that deserve our respect. And then when we talk about, more people like that, we have plenty of people who fit this criteria. We can talk about the Universal Negro Improvement Association and the African Communities League of Marcus Mosiah Garvey, of Amy Ashwood Garvey, of Amy Jacques Garvey. We can talk about their contribution 100 years ago, where they laid one of the initial foundations, along with the work of W.B. Du Bois and others, for Pan-Africanism, and where the Garvey movement made sincere efforts to make our struggle international, as it should be. 100 years ago, with no cell phones, no internet, they did that. And they struggled to make sure that that happened. And so now today, we can benefit from that work. I'm reading a book about Louise Little, the mother of Malcolm X, and Louise Little and her husband Earl Little, Malcolm X's father, they were active organizers within the UNIA. So with all due respect to, our family members in the Nation of Islam who love to say that Malcolm X was the complete creation of Elijah Muhammad, that's not dialectical. That's not a dialectical analysis. When the man's parents were already active in the Pan-Africanist movement, there's no way that that would not have had some impact on his thinking, whether it was conscious or unconscious. That's unquestionably true. So, and even on Elijah Muhammad's thinking, when we've been able to document that he himself was a member of the UNIA. So the UNIA's influence is still here today. And certainly they faced the wrath of imperialism for being who they are. The Land and Freedom Movement, or what you call the Mau Mau movement in Kenya, who engaged in organizing work. We have on the screen the picture of Dedan Kimathi. And then there's Fred Batau and the other leaders of the Land and Freedom Movement in Kenya, who stood up heroically against British imperialism and refused to accept the definition of nonviolent struggle when the Europeans were using violence against our people in Kenya every day. The Mau Mau struck back, and they were able to take the lives of up to 60 some odd Europeans who were engaged in colonial violence against our people in Kenya. And this courageous effort on behalf of the Land and Freedom Movement in Kenya in the 50s and 60s had moved to inspire African revolutionaries all over the world. Huey P. Newton, the co-founder and the lead ideologue for the Black Panther Party, made it clear that the Black Panther Party were the offspring of the Land and Freedom Movement. No question about that. And when we talk about the Cuban Revolution, we can go on and on, talking about comrades like Comrade Fidel Castro and Comrade Ernesto Che Guevara on the scene there, always friends to the struggles of African people, always friends, still to this day, for their entire 60 plus years of existence. The Cuban Revolution has done that. We don't want to hear nothing about what you're trying to tell us about the Cuban Revolution. Don't be within spitting distance. when you're trying to tell me that. I'm gonna tell you that right now, because we know who our friends are. And we know that if you're speaking against the Cuban Revolution, you ain't our friend. I don't care how much you grin and smile and move up next to us. We're not that stupid. We know exactly what that's all about. We know who was there when we needed them, and they have been the people that were there. You know, this is why we're not confused about any of this stuff, you all. We know who we are. The Democratic Party here in the US has never been here when we needed them. They've only been here when they needed us. They only come around when they need us to vote for them. I don't care. I know they got Negroes in the Democratic Party now. I know the Negro woman ran. You Negroes sitting around here, well, was she black? I don't give a damn. She represents imperialism. So the point is that she represents the Democratic Party, which is a firm representative of imperialism. And the other party is, without question, a firm representative at all, as well, rather. So we know this. So we're not confused about that. We know these people are not our friends. You stand there and say that you support Israel forever. You're not our friend. You're going to stand there and say that you want to deport indigenous people. This is their land. They have every right. I wish the indigenous people would line up on the Mexican side of the border, line up like 100,000 of them and just run across the goddamn border. I would love to see that. I would hope before I die, I see that. I want to be in somewhere where there's large screen TVs and they just start running. And then when those 100,000 run over, another 100,000 come right behind them. They can't do anything to stop it. And I want to be somewhere with a bunch of these crackers and graham crackers watching that. And I'm going to be laughing my ass off when I see it and cheering for the indigenous people to come through and reclaim their lands. They have every right to do that. Every right to do that. That's what justice looks like. That's exactly what justice looks like. The Black Panther Party, of course, emerged from the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee and its work in Alabama in 1965 to forge the Lowndes County Freedom Organization. And because 80% of our people in Lowndes County, Alabama could not read, and the racist Democratic Party there and the racist Republican Party there had animal symbols, a donkey and some other cracker animal, I don't know, can't remember offhand. So we decided, our people, to create an animal image for the Lowndes County Freedom Organization in Alabama, and that was the Black Panther. And because of the violence, there was so much violence against us registering to vote that people called Lowndes County Bloody Lounge. That's why the picture in the screen shows the brother with the rifle in front of the Lowndes County sign. And this was the idea that influenced Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale to call their organization the Black Panther Party. And if you study it, you know that in his autobiography, Revolutionary Suicide, he talks about asking Kwame Ture to use the title, and Kwame telling him that the title belongs to the people. You don't have to ask, go for it. And Kwame Ture talks about it in his autobiography, Ready for the Revolution. So this is the inspiration, because no question, the Lowndes County Freedom Organization, Kwame Ture, Mukasa Dada, Cleveland Sellers, and the other, Ruby Doris, Smith Robinson, the other militants in SNCC risked their lives putting together the Lowndes County Freedom Organization, helping those Africans. The brother Hewlett, John Hewlett, who was the president of the Lowndes County Freedom Organization, risked his life because of these racist crackers down there to have an independent African political party, stood up for that despite the consequences, and there were many. People were beaten, people were arrested, people were killed in the course of this struggle. But this is what you have to do if you sincerely want to stand up for justice. So all of these people that we're naming, Fidel, Che, Didon Kamati, Marcus, Amy, and Amy Jock Garvey, Huey P. Newton, Kwame Ture, Ruby Doris Smith Robinson, Miss Fannie Lou Hamer, Kwame Nkrumah, Secretary Amilcar Cabral, Carmen Piera, Mbalia Kamara, all of the heroes of all of these organizations that we have mentioned here. These are our veterans, and we honor them. They give us inspiration to continue this struggle. How in the hell could I have such wonderful role models as the people I just named, and then you trot out Cracker Trump and Graham Cracker Harris in front of me, and I'm supposed to be inspired by you. Ought to be out of your goddamn mind. Out of your mind. Seek psychiatric attention immediately. We know exactly who we are. And our job is to continue to fight against these forces of oppression and exploitation. And we are going to continue to do that. And thank God we have all of these examples of true veterans for justice who remind us every day why we do the work that we do. So we just want to thank you for joining us. We invite you to join us back next week. We're moving closer to one of their big imperialist institutions, the Thanksgiving holiday. And so the program next week is going to be healthy alternatives with family to the Thanksgiving type holidays. We don't want you to boycott your families. We're trying to build revolution. That means we have to be able to talk to people and get them to warm to the ideas we have for how to build a better society. So use tactical approaches like participating with them around these reactionary holidays, but do it in a way that engages in a political educational process. You're not helping anything by isolating yourself and being alone. How is that improving the situation? It makes you feel better. And this is the problem we have is so many of us are confused that we think that advancing the struggle just means doing something to make us feel better individually. That's not advancing the struggle. That's just making you feel better. We don't care about that. We want to advance the struggle and make a contribution to make the world a better place. So join us next week. Go to the QR code at the top left, the red one, and you can find out all of the AAPRP programs. You can go to the Forward Ever shop and buy clothes to support the building of the AAPRP and our African sibling organizations. Go to hoodcommunist.org. You can also join the AAPRP or get more information at aaprp-intl.org. So please do that. Donate to the AAPRP at Venmo at A-APRP or PayPal at AAPRP, no dashes. And support Burkina Books, the bottom right black and white QR code. Scan that with your smartphone. You know, if your phone is smart, then you got to ask yourself, what does that make you? And you're using it. Okay, so think about that. You know, those of you that are against study. I told someone the other day, he's like, I got my smartphone. I'm like, well, then that's you definitely need a phone that's smart. And he was like, are you trying to insult me? I don't think I tried. I think it was clear that that's what happened. You know, he's telling me he voted for Trump because he doesn't think a woman could lead a country. I'm like, he's like, where do you get your information? From my smartphone. I'm like, yeah, your phone is the only thing smart in your sphere, that's for sure. So go there, Burkina Books, and get that information. Support Burkina Books, become a sponsor of it, and support my book, A Guide for Organizing Defense Against White Supremacist, Patriarchal, and Fascist Violence, A Guide for Organizing Defense Against White Supremacist, Patriarchal, and Fascist Violence. We are organizing anti-fascist work. Fascism is, of course, on the rise, as anybody with half a brain could predict, and we have to be prepared to show our folks and all peace and justice-loving people how to defend themselves. Most of you are not going to do anything, and you're going to find yourself in a situation where you don't know what to do, and it'll be too late. And you'll be calling for your mama and Jesus, and all of them be looking at you like, hey, we sent you people. That Jesus will be saying, we sent you people that will help you get prepared, and you ignore that. What do you want me to do? Shit, I'm not a magician. So we're trying to do the best we can. That's all we can control. But we ask your help. And the book is a great book in terms of talking about organizing on local levels. So tell people about the book. If you're celebrating imperialist holidays, it's only $8 on Amazon. Buy it there and give out the book as presents to people. But that money is used to finance our anti-fascist work. So we thank you for joining us. We look forward to seeing you the next time. Stay safe, you all. Forward ever, backwards never.